Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. Right now you're watching our in-depth video review of this guy here, the iPad mini. It's available right now. You can pick it up for $330. It's a 16GB Wi-Fi version. And of course it's going to jump in price depending on if you go with a higher memory capacity one or even one that has a 4G LTE connectivity. Now it's kind of weird because with the iPhone we saw it go from a smaller screen to a larger screen, but with this latest iPad it went from a larger screen down to a smaller screen. Now it's 7.9 inches on here and it shares many of the same specifications found with the iPad 2, strange enough. Same resolution, 1024 by 768, so it's not a Retina display. It has a dual-core 1GHz Apple A5 processor with 512 megabytes of RAM. So we're going to find out whether or not at that price point, $330, it's going to make the iPad mini a competitive offering out there. Compared to some other tablets in the same size category, there's no question about it. The iPad mini really stands out for its incredible, svelte construction. Even though this design is nothing really new, it's just basically what we've seen before, but just the improvements made to how skinny it's made, and of course its construction really stands it apart from other things out there. Now, it utilizes some of the design elements found with the iPhone 5. For example, you have the chamfer bevel edge around there, and it is extremely, wide in the hand to hold just because of the larger display compared to some 7-inch tablets out there. And of course, when you factor in its 4:3 aspect ratio of the display, kind of attributes to the wider form in the hand, but nevertheless, still able to hold it with one hand. A little bit easier if you hold it towards one side like so. Now, the other amazing thing is just how skinny this guy is. It's actually skinnier than the iPhone 5, which is pretty amazing when you think about that. And on top of that, it's constructed of some premium choice materials. You have the unibody aluminum, giving it its added strength and durability, evenly distributed with its weight, giving it, a sense of, sturdiness all around. But it's really difficult to actually remove all the smudges in the back there. But for the most part, very amazing when it comes to just the overall construction. It really sets it apart from every other tablet we've seen thus far. As much as we adore the impeccable construction of the iPad mini, we gotta say the display is probably the most disappointing part about it. You'd think Apple would probably bring a Retina display on this guy, but it doesn't. In fact, it uses the same resolution as the original iPad and the iPad 2. 7.9-inch IPS LCD panel featuring a resolution of 768 by 1024. Obviously, for here in the home screen with the icons and the text, not a problem at all, but we definitely notice the lacking its details when it comes to like web browsing. Of course, from a zoomed out view, text can be a little bit difficult to make out, especially from far glance, but of course, it's remedied by just doing pinch gestures. But when you compare it to some of the other displays out there, like we've seen already in the Kindle Fire HD, you'd imagine that Apple would bring something a little bit more high resolution. But nevertheless, you still have all the great qualities about Apple's displays here. For example, some nice natural color tones, you got some wide viewing angles, a high brightness output. So as far as outdoor visibility, it's not a problem. Naturally, there's no issues in terms of accidental press with the iPad mini's physical home button. It's recessed just like before, but still responsive as ever. Of course, there's a front-facing camera on here. It's a 1.2 megapixel one and has the ability to shoot 720p videos. As for the kind of buttons and their placements, it's the same thing we've seen already on previous iPads. You have the volume control and also the mute switch on the right-hand side, and they're very responsive and very distinct. On the top trim, we have the very pronounced and dedicated power button. You have the microphone here and 3.5mm headset jack. The other new thing found with the iPad mini that we didn't see with the other previous iPad models, the fact that it's now utilizing Apple's proprietary Lightning docking port for its connection here for data and charging connectivity, and you have also stereo speakers. And lastly, in the rear, perched in the upper left-hand corner here, you have the 5-megapixel autofocus camera, no flash, but it does feature an f2.4 lens, so hopefully it's going to produce shots that are better in lower lighting conditions, and also has the ability to shoot 1080p videos. So I'm not going to go into great detail about the software running on the iPad mini just because it is iOS 6, the same exact experience you'd get on the iPad 3rd generation and the 4th generation one, but I'm going to quickly tell you what I like about it, don't like about it. So first of all, it's very easy, it's straightforward, intuitive, so it's first time, getting used to the tablet platform. This is definitely something you want to take a look at. We love its simplicity, but at the same time, it's kind of lacking in personalization that you find with other rival platforms, and it's very basic with its grid-like approach. Nothing different since the first incarnation of iOS, and compared to the dynamic look of Android, even Windows, it's really lacking in the visual department here. But the other cool things that we like about it is the gestures in play. It still has the same gestures you find on the other iPads. The 5-finger pinch gesture to quickly get back to the home screen. You could even use the 4-finger gesture to actually switch between open applications. It's very useful and also practical. And of course, the notifications panel has all the stuff we'd need and on top of that you could even post to Facebook and Twitter. Internally, the iPad mini is sporting the same hardware as the iPad 2. Specifically, it's a 1 GHz dual-core Apple A5 processor with 512 MB of RAM. So on paper, there's nothing stellar compared to the quad cores out there, but when it comes to the real-world performance, we're more than convinced and happy by its performance. You can tell here with the home screen, it's able to track our finger very tightly. So for pretty much all basic tasks, it executes it fairly well here. A few issues. It has that good finesse and fluidity with its operation. So if it's opening up applications, if you're going into the web browser and you're going to do some pinch zooming and even some kinetic scrolling, it has that nice level of fluidity that we really like. On top of that, even more processor-intensive a task, like gaming for example, it's still able to provide us a really good performance. It barely lags in slowdown, and overall, you can't quite count it out in terms of raw processing power. Since the iPad mini is sporting a smaller display compared to the iPad 3rd generation and 4th generation models, it's a little bit tougher and more challenging to actually type away using the landscape keyboard here, just because with the smaller footprint, of course the layout's going to be a little bit limiting, but still very responsive and quick in its performance. We actually prefer using the portrait option here just because our thumbs are able to encompass the entire layout with very few issues in terms of having to stretch them out, and of course you could use a split style keyboard if you prefer, which also works in landscape, so that kind of helps out as well. For what it's worth, the iPad mini is still a great device when it comes to web browsing. It might not have the extensive features found with the Galaxy Note 10.1, like the hovering feature of it, but regardless of that, it still has all the qualities we love about it. Some tight pinch gestures and even kinetic scrolling, so great navigational controls. It loads up our site here properly and very quickly, and of course, specific versions of the iPad will feature 4G LTE connectivity, so you get faster data speeds. Seeing that this is running iOS 6, there's nothing different about the music player interface here on the iPad mini. The same exact one I've been used to in previous iPads, so it's very conventional in terms of its presentation, even its functionality. However, we gotta say, the audio quality from its two speakers, it's very powerful, if not just as strong as the speaker on the iPad 3rd generation model, and it's probably one of the strongest ones out there. Not surprisingly, the iPad mini is a great device for going to be watching high-definition videos like the one we have here, which is encoded in H.264. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't offer support for a wide array of codecs out of the box, but regardless of that, it's still a pleasant thing to look at just because it's playing it very smoothly, very few issues of lag or slowdown, some pleasant colors, and of course, the real estate is decent enough as well. Just to show you guys, here's the camera UI on the iPad mini. Now, we like that it's clutter-free, but unfortunately, though, it's kind of lacking when it comes to manual settings and even shooting modes. You have the shutter key on the right-hand side. It rotates too when you're shooting in portrait, and you have some buttons to some other things. For example, if you press options, the only thing you're given is just the grid. You could switch between the cameras and even to video or even still shot. If you swipe to the right, you gain access to the camera, so you could quickly preview what you just shot, and it's very fast too when it comes to snapping photos. It's pretty instantaneous, especially once it quickly focuses in. You could even do a digital zoom by doing pinch gestures. As I mentioned earlier, the iPad mini is sporting a 5-megapixel autofocus camera in the rear, which has an f2.4 lens. Now, even though I wouldn't necessarily use a tablet to take photos, the smaller size of the iPad mini kind of helps out in that aspect. And if it was the only thing laying around, I'd definitely still use it. Now, as far as the quality is concerned, though, it's good for a tablet, but compared to some of these smartphone leads out there, it's not quite in the same level. But as a whole, as long as there's adequate lighting, especially in outdoor situations, it has a good balance with its overall quality. Some average details combined with some natural looking colors. It handles dynamic range fairly well here, so it doesn't overexpose certain areas more than others. In lower lighting situations, however, though, we do notice just some graininess, some softer details, but again, the exposure kind of helps out, so it doesn't really overexpose certain areas. At the same time, the iPad mini takes some nice looking 1080p videos with its camera as well. More than acceptable, and it definitely stands higher than some other tablets out there. Now, even though it's lacking continuous autofocus, you still have touch focus enabled, so you can actually modify it on the go. But we like it for its neutral balance. You have some average details, natural looking colors, smooth recording at 29 frames per second, and its exposure is fairly gradual. It's not sensitive or jerky like that. And audio quality is clear and distinctive. So we've been checking out the Wi-Fi only version of the iPad mini, and to tell you the truth, the battery life is exceptional, definitely better than some other tablets out there. In fact, it pushes out a little bit more juice compared to the experience that we find on the third generation iPad model. Now, we're able to get at least a day and a half of normal usage, but of course, if you're going to be using the cellular connected version of the iPad mini, especially on 4G LTE connectivity, you can expect the figure to drop tremendously. Obviously, pricing matters to a lot of people, and in an age where we have $200 tablets that have HD displays, quad-core processors, some might not feel that you're getting a whole bang for the buck with the iPad mini, especially when it starts at $330 for the base 16GB version, Wi-Fi version, and of course that's going to jump up if you choose to go with one that has higher memory capacity and even cellular connectivity. But beyond that, the most important thing here is that this is a premium tablet. That's why it's priced at $330 and not something lower. The thing that stands out most is just the impeccable construction of the iPad mini. It's unmatched in this category. No other tablets within its size category can match it. It has some nice choice materials, one svelte body, and just really radiates as a premium device. And of course, the experience is unchanged, but still you get that wonderful ecosystem of iPad optimized applications. So even though you're spending more money on this guy and you might not have some impressive specs, it still gets the job done, and it's more travel friendly than the regular iPad. So if you'd like to learn more about the iPad mini, guys, you could check out our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V. Thanks for watching.